Today I'm going to be running through 38 members of the Manchester United squad and telling you whether I think Erik Ten Hag should keep him, sell him, loan him, or contract exit him. Now this obviously comes off the back of the news that Erik Ten Hag is going to be staying at Manchester United next season. Lots of discussion about squad members, so before I get into this I want to hear from you guys at home, which one player would you sell for big money? Because United have PSR issues and somebody's going to have to go. This video is sponsored by HelloFresh. More on them later. Let's start with the goalkeepers though, and Andre Onana, who for me is a nailed on keep. Yes, he started the season very slowly. His Champions League campaign was comical, quite frankly. The amount of individual errors, the worst XG in terms of prevented goals of any goalkeeper in the competition, and he went out at the group stages, led a lot of fans to question whether or not he was going to be Manchester United's long-term goalkeeper. I think he's easily good enough to be that. Across the second half of the season, for me, he really stepped up. He was the 5th best goalkeeper in the entire Premier League in terms of post-shot expected goals numbers. He was positive in that respect. He faced the most shots pretty much of any goalkeeper in the league. One of the most shots of any goalkeeper in Europe. He is slightly unorthodox in his saving style. He often dives past the ball and he certainly makes individual errors. But it was his first season at Old Trafford and the #1 shirt weighs heavy. Let's not forget David De Gea's first couple of seasons at Old Trafford, riddled with individual errors. What I like about Andre Onana is his leadership, is what he provides off the field. Everybody loves him at the club. He fronts up to the media, and on the field, he's not afraid to make mistakes. He makes some big saves. His distribution is excellent, and clearly he has the personality and the character to improve. That's what I think he'll do in his second season. As for Altay Biandir, I suppose he's also a keep, right? United bought him in last season from Fenerbahce for about £4 million, but he only played one game, and that was the match against Newport County, where he conceded 2. So look, he seems to be an able backup. He's still only 26 years old. There were calls, weren't there, last season when Onana was having his howlers. Why is Biandir not getting games? Why is he not being given opportunities? Well, I think Erik Ten Hag's perspective was the more Onana plays, the more settled he's going to be, the better he's going to become. And that proved to be correct. Biandir next season will get opportunities. The Europa League should provide him with more minutes, and I hope he takes them, and I hope he puts pressure on Onana. It's great when you've got a #2 that is elite. Look at Stefan Ortega for Manchester City. When he was bought in, when Edison was injured, could provide big moments. We haven't seen enough of Biandir really to say whether or not that's going to be the case. He was certainly highly rated in Turkey, played an awful lot of games for one of the best teams in the nation. I think he's an able backup and he's worth keeping. Before we get on to the rest of the squad, this video is sponsored by HelloFresh. If you're anything like me and you often get caught up watching the football, playing football, or just living life to think about what you're going to eat, then HelloFresh are perfect for you. They bring a world of different flavours right to your doorstep. All you got to do is scan the QR code that's right on screen there, or click the link in the top of the description. As you can see here, this is my order for the week. 3 different meals, lots of different variety, super healthy. And the best thing about this was, I was literally sat at home, all the ingredients I need arrive straight away. Now, I've been using HelloFresh for a while, and the best thing about it, I think, are that the ingredients are super fresh and it's super budget friendly, starting at just £3.15 per serving. They're also really easy to make. I'm a terrible chef, but because there's step-by-step instructions, you basically can't go wrong. So if you like the sound of that, click the link in my description. You'll get 60% off your first box, as well as 20% off your next 2 months, and free desserts for life. Tom Heaton as well might be 38, and he's actually out of contract, but United are in negotiations trying to get him back to the table, trying to agree a new contract there, and it's easy to see why. When you speak to anyone at Manchester United, they often talk about Tom Heaton as being one of the most vital members of the squad. And the reason for that, #1, very, very experienced. #2, he's one of the most loved personalities in the squad. Brings everybody together. Everybody loves Tom Heaton. Just keep him, even though he's 38. You can see why he's so good. Gareth Southgate is taking him to the Euros, almost as his like sort of support staff member, goalkeeping coach, come player who can represent in train. He's just class off the field, clearly. So you've got to try and keep players like that. Into the fullbacks we go. We got one of my favourite players at the club. Diogo Dalot, who really should have won the Player of the Year award for me. I know it went to Bruno, but Diogo won the Players Player of the Year award, and it's easy to see why. 35 starts for United last season in the Premier League. The majority of them came at left back. His versatility and his humbleness to play wherever the manager wants him to is a key factor in Manchester United's success. He's definitely better as a right back. There's no denying that. His numbers in Erik ten Hag's first season at the club were really good. This is a really well-rounded full-back profile. He can invert, but he can also play wide. He's got a little bit of a knack for scoring really good goals. And I do think because he didn't play so many minutes when he was extremely young, he's still improving. He's still getting better. I expect big things this coming season from Diogo Dalot. I'm expecting him to start as the right back and be a key component of how we defend. I also love his attitude, celebrating tackles, celebrating other teammates' successes in individual duels. There's something to be said for characters like him, Lisandro Martinez, who just love to defend. I think United need more players like Diogo Dalot. As for Aaron Wan-Bissaka, I'm on the fence here, and the reason I'm going to put him in sell, I think, is that his contract is up in 2025. So if you don't move him on now, this summer, you lose him for free potentially next season, unless you give him a new contract, which I'm not sure United should do. This season was actually his most starts since 2020. 20 Premier League starts at right back because of the injury issues United struggled with. And look, there's no denying in the individual battle against a lights-out electric dribbler like Jeremy Doku, Wan-Bissaka might be one of the best options in world football. But as a progressive team that want to get on the ball, tactically evolve their style where the fullbacks invert or the fullback overlaps, he gets involved in final third play, gets involved in build-up, not sure that suits Wan-Bissaka's game. And that's not to say he's not going to have a great Premier League career, because there's going to be clubs interested in a player like Wan-Bissaka should he become available. Homegrown, still only 26 years old, big club experience, one of the best defenders in the league. He's going to have clubs very interested in him. And if that's the case, if somebody was to come in for £20 million, I think Manchester United should look to recoup as much of that £50 million fee as they can. Brandon Williams has obviously left the club. There's a few players in this list that have actually already left the club on contract exits that we're going to come on to. At left back, you've got Terrell Malacia and you've got Luke Shaw. Now, Malacia, I'm so gutted for him this season because he's had that terrible problem with the knee injury. He hasn't even stepped foot on the training pitch for a minute, let alone Old Trafford. I would still err on the side of keeping him. I don't want to give up on him just yet. He's still only 24 years old, and in his opening campaign for Erik ten Hag, there were signs there. His tenacity, his defensive ability, there was something there for me that meant I want to give him one more season. It's in the back of my head. I still believe there's a good player in Terrell Malacia, and I think there are other areas in the squad where I would rather spend my money. As for Luke Shaw, there is some debate. Some people online, you know, I've seen Faisal, for instance, come on to Saturday Social and say he thinks United should sell Luke Shaw. His fitness game isn't there. I disagree. I think United should keep Luke Shaw. When he's fit, he's one of the best left-backs in world football. I agree with Erik ten Hag on that point. He hasn't been fit enough. There's no denying that. He's played about 50% of the available minutes for Manchester United in the decade he's been here. But look, what tends to happen, it's a bit weird here with Luke Shaw's career, is he has a season off, then a season on. I don't know why it happens. Maybe it's because his body is allowed to reset. But if you look here from about 2018 onwards, it's happened. 29 starts, then 20, then 30, then 19, then 30, then 12. I'm hoping again this season is the season on for Luke Shaw. Because when he is on, his passing numbers are massively underrated. So composed on the ball, an absolute line splitter when he inverts, but also able to go on the outside with his physicality, with his pace and power, and support Marcus Rashford. One of the reasons, there's no doubt about this, that Marcus Rashford has struggled this season is because he hasn't had Luke Shaw behind him. When Luke Shaw is able to provide the overlap or come inside, defend 1v1, it makes Marcus Rashford's life much easier. These numbers are not normal numbers. I expect him to have a big season next year. Now he's had a little break. As for Harry Amass, who's still only 17 by the way, highly talked of, highly thought of at United. We will have all seen Luke Shaw's interview talking him up as being the next superstar to watch out of Manchester United. He's still only 17. He only joined from Watford 2023, wasn't it? I'd like to see him get a loan to a high-level championship club, because what we've seen in the championship is players being able to play really well at the top level there, and then go and have immediate impacts at big clubs. Be it Ian Matson, who did it for Burnley. Be it Adam Wharton, who's done it for Blackburn, then gone to Crystal Palace, now having impact for England. Or before them, Bowen, Elise, Eze. The list is huge now. Gyökeres. It's not just players that are going to have an impact at lower level Premier League sides. Some of these players are going to become stars at European heavyweights. Into the centre-backs, and Varane has obviously gone on a contract exit. I think that was the right decision. His mobility and his injury record, when you weigh it up against the wage and the fact his contract was up, I wouldn't have given him a new deal. I think that was the right call. As for Victor Lindelof, I would probably look to sell. A little bit like Wan-Bissaka, the fact his contract is up in 2025 weighs heavy on my mind. He's averaged about 1,300 minutes across the last 2 seasons, so not started an awful lot of games. He's 29 years old now. I still think there are question marks about his defensive ability, his aerial ability. He's not combative enough at times, but there will be interest across Europe. I've seen teams in Turkey being heavily linked to about 10 million euros. If you can get that fee, I would accept it. Willy Camboila, he's a keep. He's only 19 years old, but he's really impressed me. He learnt a lot of lessons that day against Dominic Solanke at Bournemouth, where Solanke threw him about like a rag doll, gave him a harsh reality of Premier League life. Because before that, he'd really impressed me. And after that, his mentality proved to me he could be a big player for Manchester United in the future. You don't see centre-backs develop until they're at their best at like 28. So Camboila can offer something to Manchester United from the bench next season. I want to see him develop in the squad as well. I want to see Erik ten Hag, like he did with Kobe, like he did with Garnacho, develop him and mould him into a specific type of centre-back. That would be great to see. Johnny Evans, I would also keep. You know, he might be 36 years old now, and he might have been a bit of a joke when he first signed amongst some rival fans, but not amongst Manchester United fans. He's proven to be a fantastic signing. He's played 30 games for United in all competitions last season. Far more than he thought he would have, far more than the club or the fans thought he would have. But did he put a single foot wrong in any of those games? Honestly, no. There were times in those games where he was our man of the match. His passing ability looked great. And what I like about him is clearly he brings the experience from former Manchester United squads forward. He's worked with some of the greatest players Manchester United have ever seen. He's able to bring that experience, what he learned in that group, into this group. He's almost like a player coach. I would keep him for that reason alone. I would also keep Harry Maguire, and I'm sure that's going to annoy a lot of people. But unlike Lindelof and Wan-Bissaka, he's got a contract with an optional extra year, so that runs till 2026. He's 31 years old now, and he is one of the best model professionals in football. He has been routinely hammered by the press, by other players, by fans. He's had the captaincy stripped from him. He's been removed from the starting lineup. He's never once moaned. He's never once kicked up a fuss. He's never once given an interview to a press outlet where he's hammered the players, hammered the manager, hammered the club. He's got his head down and he's got on with it. Not only has he got on with it, but he's actually played well last season. There were times when he was our best and most key component at centre-back. His on-the-ball ability is actually pretty decent. In 1v1 defending inside of his box, he's great. He's a threat in the opposition box. And most importantly, he will just run through brick walls for you. He's played consistently at Manchester United with major injury problems, played through the pain, played through injections. There is something to be said for characters like this in the dressing room. I really like Maguire. Just as a bloke as well as a player, I would keep him. That brings us to Lisandro Martinez. Yeah, I mean, a really obvious keep. Manchester United's most important player, some people might argue. The fact that he had 2 serious injuries last season effectively killed us. His transition play through the lines is one of the best in Europe. He's in the top 5% of all European centre-backs for take-ons, progressive passes, pass accuracy. He's deadly on the ball. He's super composed, but he's also a dog off it. He is so aggressive, loves to tackle, combative, gets in your face. Players like him and Dalot, like I spoke about earlier, bleed through the team. You want that aggressiveness just spreading through the team. You need warriors, and he is one. Into the midfield we go, and Sofian Amrabat is the first name that appears. Difficult didn't get given enough chance last season, Sofian, did he? There were times when Erik ten Hag should have been playing him in the defensive midfield role. It felt like when Christian Eriksen was getting given minutes, should it not have just been Amrabat to shore up that role? Even over Casemiro, maybe, he was really struggling. But having said all of that, does that warrant United spending 10 to 15 million pounds on a player whose contract at Fiorentina is up in 2025? I don't think it does. Look, he obviously loves playing for Manchester United, and there is something to be said for the passion he showed. But on the ball, I wasn't massively impressed. Off the ball, it felt like his mobility wasn't quite at the level United needed to partner Kobbie Mainoo. Yes, he's very combative and aggressive, but in open spaces, he's not the fastest, he's not the most agile. I think players went past him too easily at times. When he gives the ball away, he struggles to turn and get back. Oh, I do like him, but I just think that 10 to 15 million pounds is better spent on a younger player. 27 years old now, and I would rather see United competing in 3 years because I just think it's unrealistic they compete now. If they're not going to compete now, let's sign players that are 22, 23, can grow and build together and compete in 2 to 3 years. Do I think that's Amrabat? No. Do I think that's Casemiro as well? Probably not. Look, he has struggled with injuries this season, and he's also struggled, and I think to some level been let down a little bit by the system. That system has left him horribly exposed. The high press, low block has meant Casemiro has 50, 60 yards to cover, and that makes him look worse than he is. I'm absolutely convinced about that. His tackle, interception numbers, his clearance numbers, still pretty consistent in and amongst the top 10% of European midfielders. What's really exposed him is in wide spaces when players have just been able to run round him. He's gone to ground way too easily. He's the most dribble pass player in the entire Premier League last season. And I think the reason he's going to ground so easily and so quickly is because he doesn't have the recovery pace anymore to get back and deal with those situations. He'll be fine in a properly structured side. United are not that. And again, it comes back to my point about Sofian Amrabat, that United aren't going to compete in the short term for league titles, for Champions Leagues. So you need to start thinking long term, signing 22, 23-year-olds that can grow together and form partnerships. In 2 to 3 years' time, is Casemiro still going to be at Manchester United competing at a high level? No. And I think that's a reason to sell him. He's your highest earner, the highest earner at the club. Those wages have got to go. Kobbie Mainoo, though, he's an obvious keep, isn't he? An exceptional level talent. Probably one of the best technical talents I've seen Manchester United produce from the academy since Paul Pogba in midfield. So composed that it's frightening. Looks like he's not got a worry in the world. Able to go past people like they're not there. Extremely strong mentality. Scores goals as well. Clutch goals at that. He's going to be a big, big player for United in the future. Christian Eriksen, into the sell category. I'm going to bleat on about it, but this idea of competing in the short term should be forgotten. It's got to be 2 to 3 years. Is Eriksen going to be there 2 to 3 years? No, I don't think so. In the short term, does he offer cover in the system that Ten Hag wants to play? Probably not. We look back to Erik ten Hag's first season. Eriksen and Casemiro, as the double pivot, were great. They complemented each other nicely. Last season, that double pivot, Eriksen did not work in there. He cannot play in a deeper, disciplined position. He works for Denmark in a free role in that 10 space where he can go where he wants, create what he wants. When you've got to ask him to sit deeper, distribute, fine, defend, no. Players go past him too easy. He doesn't have the pace or the physicality for the Premier League in a deep line midfield role. It's true. And he's still got a year left on his contract. So, I mean, it might be a case of sort of saying, look, is there a way we can part ways here and allow you to leave on a free? If not, can we get a small, negligible fee for him? I think it's probably time. Next up is Dan Gore. Let's try and get him a loan move, man. The Port Vale injury killed him, and he dislocated his shoulder recently, so he's going to miss pre-season. I hope he can get a loan move, though. Okay, Mason Mount. Definite keep for me. I really like Mason Mount. People will be hammering me for that opinion, but I don't care. United need to find a way of getting the 2022 Mason Mount, the pre-injury Mason Mount, back to full fitness, because this season, fitness-wise, has been a disaster. The final 6 to 8 months at Chelsea was a disaster. 2022 Mason Mount in the attacking midfield right wing role was really, really high level. On the ball, he was so sharp. Off the ball, he worked like a dog. He created chances. He was a constant nuisance for everybody. He's still only 25 years old. I believe he can get back to these numbers, which are exceptional. Expected assists in the top 3% of European attacking midfielders. There is something there. Even when he came off the bench for United in little moments, I still believe you saw things where you're like, bloody hell, there is still a really top-level player here in Mason Mount. Just up to Erik ten Hag to find a system that works for him, be it the diamond midfield, which I think could. United looked better in that diamond midfield the last 4 or 5 games with the split strikers, Bruno Fernandes playing as the most advanced number 10. We look way better. And I think Mount and Mainu behind Bruno with a defensive midfielder could work. He's just got to get fit. Talking of Bruno, yep, an obvious keep. There were some narratives developing that United should sell Bruno Fernandes. What are we talking about here? Bruno Fernandes is Man United's best player. He's one of the most outstanding creators in Europe. Consistently across the last 5 seasons, he's put up the most chances of any player in the Premier League, or at least alongside KDB in contention for that. And not only is he an amazing creator, he's a dog off the ball. He is never injured. He'll press like a monster. And people hammer him for this captaincy malarkey. Oh, how is he the Manchester United captain? What a load of rubbish, man. Seriously. On the field, yes, he might moan at the referee, might moan at opposition, and occasionally might throw his arms up at a player. He is one of the most loved players at Manchester United. All of the players would say he's the perfect captain. He does all of the media. He's brilliant with the staff and the youth team. Like I said, he's a great role model with how hard he works and how he's never injured. He put up 18 goal involvements in the Premier League last season, 28 in all competitions. I don't see what more Bruno can do. It's like he's fighting a constant uphill battle, to be honest with you, against some narratives. If I was Bruno, I'd be actually saying to Manchester United, look, I could be at another club here in Europe winning way bigger silverware than winning at United. What's the strategy going forward? Like, it wouldn't be a total surprise to me that Bruno says, look, I'm not being funny. You're not matching my ambitions here. And I would say that's almost fair enough. He could easily play for one of the 3 or 4 best teams in Europe. I have no doubt. As for Donny van de Beek, yeah, so sad, man, but I do believe he is a sell. Look, when Erik ten Hag came, there was a glimmer of hope for me that he was going to be able to get the best out of Donny, and then the major knee injury happened. The loan moves to Everton and Frankfurt haven't worked. I really hope he can get his career restarted somewhere else, because it doesn't feel like it's going to be at Manchester United. I've only got 3 midfielders in the squad so far, so it's pretty obvious I'm going to keep Scott McTominay. He had a great season. Say what you want about Scott McTominay on the ball, and there are certainly holes to his game. He is really good at getting in dangerous positions around the box. He's a box crasher. That's what is best describing Scott McTominay. When he's playing as a 6, it's not his game. Even as an 8 at times, he leaves a lot to be desired on the ball. When you play him almost as a second striker, a 10, he's a huge threat and a huge impact player off the bench. I like his attitude too. Like Harry Maguire, never seems to moan, never kicks up a fuss. An academy player that scores big goals, 10 this season. Without some of his goals, I dread to think where United would have been. He's earned the right to have another season at the club. He's not a starter, but I go back to it. Not everybody in the team can be. You've got to have good characters around the club, and Scott McTominay is that. Hannibal, he would be in my sell. I think there's potential to get a decent fee for him here. He was on loan at Sevilla, never got given a chance. I read some Spanish media reports that were kind of hammering Quique Sanchez Flores for not giving him enough opportunity. There were obviously the quotes from Sanchez Flores that almost labelled him a bit of a bad personality, said that he didn't know what it meant to be a Sevilla player. Well, he never got given the chance to know what it means to be given a Sevilla player. That loan hasn't worked, and I expect there to be serious interest in him. At Manchester United, in the youth sides, he was one of the most highly thought of youngsters in any of the age groups. He arrived a huge prospect. He works extremely hard. He's very, very physical. Almost over the top physical at times. Remember when he first came on against Liverpool, he was just hacking people down. But I think there's going to be interested in him, and I think it's now time to sell. Shola Shoretire, I mean, technically his contract's up. United are trying desperately, I think, to renegotiate terms and convince him to stay. If that's the case, then let's get him a loan move. Let's get him a loan move to the Championship and see what he can do. Physically, he is quite small, but that's not to say he can't perform. Ahmad, very small physically, was one of the best players in the Championship last season. Let's see what Shola can do. Amari Forson, he's already gone on a contract exit. He's joined Monza. Facundo Pellistri, another player I think United should sell. A player United should look to try and get an alright fee for as well. Very highly rated in South America. Starts at times for Uruguay, but never really worked at Manchester United. Again, physically, it's felt like he's a little bit boy against men. He has had impacts and he's certainly direct, but his loans haven't quite worked out. He's only got a year left on his contract. I'd try and get a fee. Reportedly, Flamengo are interested. Anthony, I would also sell. Hasn't worked out. Manchester United paid a huge fee for him and he was extremely highly rated at Ajax. But in the Premier League, the physicality is too much for his game. It's too predictable. Coming back on that left foot, everybody knows what he wants to do. And he hasn't been able to add the second string to his bow of going on the outside and using his right. United looked at their best last season when Garnacho played out there. If you're going to cash in on Anthony, it may as well be now. I don't think it's ever going to quite work. I also think Jadon Sancho is in this sell category. With Erik ten Hag staying at the club, it's inevitable. I think it's a little bit easier and maybe better for Sancho's game when he's actually playing abroad. Because at Borussia Dortmund, everybody was speaking about how well he was doing, and in Champions League games, he certainly impressed. I think to the PSG performance, it was mind-blowing. So good in terms of his dribbling. But when, you know, the rest of his season, it was all right. It was all right. But these performances where he's not at his absolute best, for instance, let's take the 1-1 against Wolfsburg where he struggled, those performances are so highlighted in the Premier League at Manchester United. When he's at Dortmund, nobody really speaks about it. I don't know whether I'm making sense there, but he can kind of get away with it a little bit more. And that's not to say he's a bad player, because obviously he's an exceptional level talent and he's one of Manchester United's few sellable assets. I think somebody should take a gamble on him because there is a potential superstar there. It's not going to be at Manchester United, though. I also found the Athletics article this week, Laurie Whitwell writing about what happened between him and Erik ten Hag quite telling. He says here, Sancho did not commit to pressing an opposition player in a practice match in the way ten Hag wanted. Sancho was then offered the chance to end his involvement early, which he took by walking off the pitch. That worries me. You know, if a coach says to you, you've got to go out there and press that guy, and if you're not going to do it, then leave. I've seen loads of coaches say that, and if the player actually leaves, that's mad. That's mad. That proves to me the relationship is over. As for Ahmad, yeah, definite keep, man. Was given nowhere near enough opportunity by Ten Hag last season. Should have had way more minutes, and I'm obviously aware injury contributed to that. But just 390 minutes of football, not enough. I really hope he gets way more minutes next season because he looked a threat in the back end. He looked such a threat when he came inside, but he can also go on the outside. Interplay was really nice with Bruno Fernandes. He's got a lovely touch, lovely ball striking. And I go back to this championship stuff that I've been repeating endlessly throughout this video, but there is something to be said, I'm convinced, about the top level of that division. Players like Gyökeres going to Sporting, Nathan Teller going to Leverkusen, Ian Maatsen going to Borussia Dortmund, Jared Bowen, Adam Wharton. Amad Diallo was arguably the best player in the Championship last year. His numbers on the ball were exceptional. You know, really, really composed in possession, able to score from unique areas. I'd like to see him get a massive opportunity next season and start 15 to 20 games. One player who got that opportunity this season was Alejandro Garnacho, 37 starts in a row, and boy did he take it. One of my favourite Manchester United players to watch because of his directness, his ability to take players on. He's in the top 5% of European forwards for successful take-ons, progressive carries, but also getting shots off. He's a shot volume monster. He's taking over 2.5 shots per game, and that does come at the detriment of his striker. Højlund has suffered because of that. He's not a creative winger, but he's so fun to watch. He's so aggressive. He's started to work harder off the ball. I almost worry that Garnacho could go past the level of Manchester United. Like, if United have another couple stagnant seasons, Garnacho could go to a level where he's saying, the club ain't matching my ambitions here. I want out. Martial, he's obviously gone on a contract exit, hasn't he? Marcus Rashford, wow. What do we do? Well, I'll tell you what I would do. I'd keep him. And the reason I would keep him is he's the one proven asset you've got in forward areas. He has been able to show us he can score upwards of 25, 30 goals in a single calendar season in all competitions for United. Nobody else has been able to do that. And yes, he didn't do it this season. He had a bad season. There's no denying that. His sort of body language off the ball left a lot to be desired. But he can do it. And with Shaw as a left back, I'm convinced he will be able to get back to those levels. We've got to start believing in some of our own players and backing them. The narrative around, oh, what's going on off the field with Rashford needs to end, in my opinion. Nobody knows, so let's stop guessing. The spotlight burns so bright on Rashford, I feel sorry for him. It burns brighter than a lot of other English talents. He's an academy player who has proven more than once that he can bang in goals for us. Let's just let him do it. Let's get him back to enjoying his football, not playing with so much pressure. I believe in Marcus Rashford. I think he can come good. I would keep him. This idea of selling him for 40, 50 million pounds to other Premier League sides is mental to me. He will go to an Arsenal and be like a superstar. We cannot let that happen. We just can't. Let's go to Højlund, who's an obvious keep. His underlying numbers aren't great, Rasmus Højlund. In terms of shots, it's at like 1.5. It's in the bottom 5% of European forwards. That's got to improve. But there's something there. There is something there. His back-to-goal play is improving. He's so physical and fast in transition. His finishing is actually good when he gets in areas. The trouble for him was he scored 16 goals last season, but the start of the season was so slow that a narrative started to develop. In the Champions League, he was on fire, but he didn't score a Premier League goal till Boxing Day. And he went through a period again after that where he scored, I think, was it 7 in 7? He was on fire, then a very quiet end to the season. What I think hampered Højlund badly was injury to that back last season. He arrived injured, he then picked up an injury, and in both occasions it took him a while to get going. Next season, when he comes back, full pre-season, off of the back of Euros, hopefully injury-free, he's going to hit the ground running. He's going to be a star next season, Højlund. As for Ethan Wheatley, let's get him alone. He actually got minutes for Manchester United, which I didn't think was going to be the case. And he was, of course, the Jimmy Murphy Young Player of the Year. But I would like to see him get loan opportunities, and I think United have to sign a striker to support Højlund next season. So that was my list of who I think Erik ten Hag should keep and let go. Let me know what you think in the comments below.